Hello, I'm really glad you're here tonight. This hour is different from the rest of the day. It doesn't ask you to decide anything. It doesn't ask you to perform or explain or keep up. It simply invites you to lie still and let your thoughts move at their own pace. As the years pass, nighttime becomes a kind of companion, a place where the mind is free to wander without interruption, where memories return not urgently but patiently, where understanding settles in quietly without needing words. Later in life, the mind doesn't race the way it once did. It reflects, it revisits, it connects dots that once seemed unrelated, and it does this most honestly when the lights are off and the world has gone silent. This space is for those thoughts, the ones that don't surface during the day, the ones that arrive only when you're alone with yourself, resting, remembering, and gently making sense of a long, lived-in life. So take a slow breath, let your body soften into the bed, and allow this night to meet you where you are. And now, before we begin, if this kind of honest, gentle reflection speaks to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And down in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are right now. There's something comforting about knowing we're all here together, scattered across time zones, but united in these late hours when the world finally grows still. So settle in, adjust your pillows, find a comfortable position, and know that for the next hour, you're not alone in whatever wisdom you're carrying, whatever understanding you've earned, whatever truths rise to the surface when the lights go out. Let's begin. There is a place in the Pacific Ocean that almost nobody knows about. A place where massive stones rest on artificial islands, where walls rise from shallow water, where human hands moved rocks that seem impossible to move, where a civilization built something magnificent and then walked away, leaving it to the tide and the jungle and the slow work of time. It's called Nan Madol, the ancient city, the Venice of the Pacific, a place that existed long before your grandparents were born, before their grandparents, before anyone in your family tree can be traced. It sits there still, on the eastern shore of Pohnpei, in Micronesia, mostly forgotten by the modern world, but refusing to disappear entirely. 92 artificial islands, constructed from massive basalt columns, some weighing dozens of tons, arranged in a lagoon, connected by channels, built without modern tools, without machinery, without any of the technology we take for granted, just human will and human hands and human determination to create something that would last. And it has lasted. For 800 years, maybe more. The stones remain. The walls still stand, though they're crumbling now. The jungle has reclaimed much of it. The water flows through the channels just as it always has. The place endures, even though the people who built it are gone. Even though their names are forgotten. Even though we don't fully understand why they built it or how they managed such massive construction or what ceremonies took place in those stone courtyards. Nan Madol is a mystery, a beautiful, enduring mystery. And tonight, as you lie here in the darkness, preparing for sleep, this ancient city has something to teach you, something about your own life, about what you've built, about what endures, about the structures you've created and the ones that have crumbled. about the mystery of how you became who you are. Because you are like Nan Madol. You don't think of yourself this way, but you are. You're a construction of impossible complexity, a lifetime of choices and circumstances stacked carefully, sometimes carelessly, into the person lying here, right now. You're made of elements that seem too heavy to have been moved into place, experiences that shaped you, relationships that formed you, losses that changed you, joys that sustained you. You're built on foundations you didn't choose. You rose from circumstances given to you, and from those foundations, you constructed a life. You moved massive stones, you built walls and chambers and spaces for living. You created connections between different parts of yourself. You channeled the flow of your energy and attention. You made something that has lasted decades, that has endured storms and erosions and the constant work of time trying to wear you down. And like Nan Madol, you contain mysteries. There are things about yourself you don't fully understand. Questions about how you manage certain impossible things. Gaps in memory where you can't quite recall how you got from one place to another. Structures in your personality that seem to have appeared without conscious construction. You are more complex than you give yourself credit for, more remarkable than you typically acknowledge. Tonight, we're going to explore these parallels. We're going to walk through the ruins of Nan Madol and through the landscape of your life simultaneously. We're going to notice what endures, what crumbles, what gets reclaimed by jungle, what remains standing despite everything. We're going to honor the massive construction project that your life has been, the incredible effort it took to build yourself, the mystery of how you managed it at all. So breathe slowly. Let your body settle deeper into the mattress. Feel the weight of yourself, the substance of you, the years and years of accumulation that make up who you are right now. You are not light. You are not insubstantial. You are made of heavy stones, carefully placed, incredibly solid, despite how fragile you sometimes feel. Let's begin at the beginning, with the foundations. The stones that form the base of Nan Madol didn't appear from nowhere. They came from a quarry on the other side of Pohnpei. Basalt columns formed by volcanic activity. Natural formations created by fire and pressure and geological forces beyond human control. The builders of Nan Madol didn't create these stones. They simply recognized them, selected them, transported them across the island somehow, and placed them where they needed to be. Your life began the same way, with stones you didn't create, with foundational elements you didn't choose. You were born into a family, a culture, a time period, a body, a temperament. These were given to you, selected by forces beyond your control. Geological forces, in a sense. The volcanic activity of ancestry and DNA and historical circumstance. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose the house you grew up in, or the neighborhood, or the economic circumstances. You didn't choose your early experiences. Whether you were held or neglected, whether you were encouraged or criticized, whether your home felt safe or dangerous, whether your basic needs were met or you learned early to go without. These foundational stones shaped everything that came after. They determined, in large part, what kind of structure you'd be able to build. whether you had solid ground to build on or unstable soil, whether you had enough material to work with or had to make do with less than you needed. You remember your childhood home, not the way it actually was necessarily, but the way it felt. The particular quality of light in the kitchen in the morning, the sounds of your family moving through their routines, the places you felt safe and the places you didn't, the corners where you hid, the windows you looked through, wondering about the world beyond. That home was your first island, your first contained space in the vast ocean of existence. It had boundaries, walls, rules about what was allowed and what wasn't, channels that directed how energy and attention flowed. Some channels were open, others were blocked. Some parts of yourself were welcomed. Others had to be hidden, stored away in chambers no one else could see. You learned early which parts of yourself could be displayed and which parts had to remain private. You learned what was acceptable and what brought punishment or disapproval. You learned to navigate the structures your family had built long before you arrived, ancient structures in their own way, patterns passed down through generations, ways of being that felt as solid and immovable as basalt columns. Some of those foundational stones were good, solid, reliable. You had parents or grandparents or someone who loved you, who provided stability, who created safety, who gave you examples of how to be human with some measure of grace and dignity. These stones have supported everything you built afterward. You return to them in moments of crisis. You rest on them when everything else feels unstable. You're grateful for them, even if you didn't fully appreciate them at the time. Other foundational stones were flawed, cracked, insufficient. You had absences where there should have been presence, chaos where there should have been structure, criticism where there should have been encouragement, coldness where there should have been warmth. These stones complicated your construction. They meant you had to work harder to build something stable. They meant some of your walls would always have weaknesses. They meant you'd spend years trying to replace those flawed foundations with better material. But you couldn't replace them entirely. That's not how foundations work. You could only build around them, compensate for them, shore them up with additional support, find ways to make them work well enough to hold what you needed to construct. You remember specific moments from childhood that feel significant even now. Times when you felt profoundly seen or profoundly invisible. Times when you were praised or shamed. Times when something was given to you or taken away. These moments were like the placement of crucial stones. They determined angles. They established patterns. They created the basic shape of what you'd become. There was the time someone believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. That stone still supports you. You can feel it beneath everything else you've built. It holds firm. There was the time someone rejected you cruelly. That stone is still there too. It's caused problems, created instabilities. You've had to work around it your entire life. There was the time you discovered you were capable of something you didn't know you could do. That revelation was a stone of a different material, lighter, more radiant. It's been a source of confidence ever since. There was the time you were betrayed, or abandoned, or hurt, in a way that changed how you trusted. That stone is dark and heavy. You've wished you could remove it, but it's too foundational. It's load-bearing now. Your whole structure depends on it, even though you hate that it's there. All of these stones, all of these early experiences, they're still present in the person you are now. They're still supporting you or complicating you, or both simultaneously. You can't see them from the surface. They're buried beneath everything you've built since. But they're there, always there. The foundation you didn't choose, but have had to work with your entire life. The builders of Nan Madol had to work with the stones they had. They couldn't wish for different material. They couldn't demand that the basalt be lighter or easier to shape. They had to accept what the island provided and figure out how to use it. You've done the same. You've worked with the childhood you were given, the family you were born into, the early experiences that shaped your understanding of how the world works and who you are in it. You didn't get to choose these elements. You only got to decide what to do with them. And what you've done is remarkable. You've taken those foundational stones, flawed and perfect, heavy and light, and you've built a life. You've constructed something complex and enduring from material you didn't select. You've moved impossibly heavy things into place. You've created structures that have held through decades of use. This is worth acknowledging. This is worth honoring. The sheer effort it took to build anything at all on the foundation you were given. The incredible strength required to move those stones into place and make them work together. The ingenuity needed to compensate for weaknesses and maximize strengths. You are an architectural marvel. You don't think of yourself this way. You focus on the cracks and the unstable sections and the parts that didn't turn out how you hoped. But step back. Look at the whole structure. Look at what you've managed to build despite everything. Look at the fact that you're still standing, still here, still functioning after years and years of use and weather and the constant pressure of simply existing. The foundations are beneath you now, literally. You're lying on top of decades of construction. You can't see those early stones from here, but you can feel them. They're holding you up. They're supporting the weight of all the years since. They're doing their job, even the flawed ones, even the ones you wish were different. So breathe it into this awareness. Notice the solidity beneath you, the substance, the reality that you are built on something, that you didn't just appear fully formed, that you have origins, that you came from somewhere, that your life rests on foundations laid long ago by forces you didn't control but have learned to work with. The stones are heavy. They've always been heavy, but you've learned to carry that weight. You've learned to distribute it properly. You've learned to build structures that can hold heavy things without collapsing. This is what it means to be alive for decades, to have a past that supports and complicates your present, to carry foundations you didn't choose into a future you're still constructing, to be both the builder and the building, both the architect and the inhabitant, both the one who places stones and the one who lives among them. Nan Madol teaches us that foundations matter, that what comes first determines much of what follows, that some stones support and others complicate, but all of them are part of the structure. that you can't understand the visible walls without knowing what lies beneath them. Your childhood is beneath you, supporting you, complicating you, making you possible. You don't have to love those foundational stones. You don't have to be grateful for all of them. You only have to acknowledge them, to recognize that they're there, to understand that they're part of why you are who you are. And then you can turn your attention to what you built next, to the structures you chose, to the walls you raised, to the chambers you created, to the life you constructed on top of those foundations, to the massive work of becoming yourself. There came a time when you had to start building for yourself, when the foundational work was done, and it was your turn to place stones, your turn to decide what kind of structure you wanted to create, your turn to move heavy things and position them carefully and hope they'd hold. This happened gradually. It wasn't a single moment. It was a process, a slow transfer of responsibility from those who built your foundation to you, a transition from being built to building, from being shaped to shaping. You were a teenager when this began, when you started to have opinions about what your life should look like, when you started to resist the structures imposed on you by others, when you started to imagine different configurations, different arrangements, different possibilities. You remember the restlessness of those years, the feeling that the life you'd been given wasn't quite right, that the walls around you were too confining, that the channels available to you didn't flow in directions you wanted to go. You wanted something different, something more, something that felt more truly yours, but you didn't know how to build yet. You had energy and desire and vague visions of what you wanted, but you didn't have skill. You didn't have experience. You didn't have the knowledge that comes only from attempting difficult things and failing and trying again. So your early construction efforts were clumsy, unstable. You tried to build things that immediately collapsed. You placed stones badly, and they fell. You created structures that couldn't support their own weight. You made mistakes, obvious mistakes. Mistakes that people tried to warn you about, but you had to make anyway because that's how you learned. You built relationships that couldn't last. You invested energy in pursuits that went nowhere. You made choices that seemed right at the time, but turned out to be detours or dead ends. You tried to construct a life that looked impressive but didn't actually function well. You prioritized the wrong things. You neglected important maintenance. You rushed construction when you should have been patient. These failures taught you. Every collapsed structure taught you something about load bearing, about balance, about which stones can sit next to each other and which create instability, about the difference between what looks good and what actually works. You remember specific failures from your late teens and early 20s, relationships that ended badly, jobs you couldn't hold, plans that fell apart, versions of yourself you tried on that didn't fit. Each failure felt devastating at the time. Each one seemed like proof that you didn't know what you were doing, that you weren't capable of building anything good, but you kept building. This is crucial. You didn't stop after the failures. You learned. You adjusted. You tried different approaches. You got better at selecting stones, at positioning them carefully, at creating stable structures that could actually support the weight of living. You started to figure out what mattered to you, what kind of life you actually wanted. versus what kind of life you thought you should want. This was its own kind of construction, building an understanding of yourself, creating clarity about your values, establishing priorities that felt authentically yours rather than borrowed from others. You built a career, or at least a way of supporting yourself. This was massive construction. It required moving incredibly heavy stones into place. Education, maybe. Training. Skill development. Learning to show up consistently. Learning to navigate workplace dynamics. Learning to produce value that others would pay for. Learning to balance your own needs with the demands of employment. Some of you built impressive careers, structures that other people admired, titles and positions and accomplishments that looked substantial from the outside. You placed stone after stone, year after year, building something that reached higher and commanded attention and provided stability. Others built more modest structures, jobs that paid the bills but never became central to your identity. Work that you did without passion but with responsibility. Structures that were functional, if not beautiful, that served their purpose even if they didn't inspire. Either way, you built something. You created a means of survival. You figured out how to participate in the economy, how to exchange your time and energy and skills for the resources you needed. This was essential construction. It had to be done. And you did it, whatever form it took. You built friendships, or you tried to. This was delicate construction. Relationships are bridges between islands. They require stones placed carefully on both sides. They require balance, reciprocity, mutual investment. They require maintenance, or they collapse. Some of your friendship bridges were strong. They've lasted decades. They've supported you through storms. They've allowed passage between your island and someone else's. They've enriched your life immeasurably. You've maintained these structures carefully because you recognize their value, because you know how rare it is to find someone willing to build toward you while you build toward them. Other friendship bridges collapsed. Distance, betrayal, growing in different directions, failures of maintenance, structural incompatibilities that weren't obvious at first. You've lost people you thought would be permanent. You've watched bridges fall into the water. You've grieved the loss of connection, the particular loneliness of standing on your island, watching someone else's island drift beyond reach. You built romantic relationships, or you tried to. This was the most complex construction of all. It required not just building bridges, but creating shared structures, merging your island with someone else's, deciding together what to build and how to build it, and what materials to use, and what the finished structure should accomplish. Some of you succeeded in this. You found someone whose building style complemented yours, whose vision aligned with yours enough to create something beautiful together. You built a partnership, a home, a family, maybe. You placed stones together. You created chambers for intimacy and chambers for privacy. You channeled resources and energy into shared projects. You built something larger than either of you could have built alone. Others attempted this construction and failed. You tried to merge with someone whose building style conflicted with yours. You had different visions, different priorities, different understandings of what a shared structure should look like. You tried to build together, but the stones never quite fit right. The walls never quite aligned. The whole thing was unstable from the start, even if you didn't want to admit it. Some of you succeeded and then watched the structure crumble. Divorce, death, betrayal, circumstantial failures. The shared structure you'd built so carefully dismantled. Stones redistributed. Islands separated again. The profound grief of losing not just a person, but the life you'd built together. The structure that had defined you for years, suddenly gone. Having to rebuild from the rubble. All of this construction happened during your young adult years and middle years. Decades of constant building. Moving stones, raising walls, creating channels, attempting stability, pursuing growth, trying to construct a life that felt worth living, that felt like yours, that functioned well enough to sustain you. The work was exhausting. You don't think about turning much now, because it's just what life required. But it was exhausting. The constant effort, the physical and emotional labor of building relationships and careers and homes and identities. The weight of all those stones, the complexity of all those decisions about where to place them. And you did it largely alone. Yes, you had help. You had people who supported you. But fundamentally, you were the architect and the primary laborer of your own life. You had to figure out what to build. You had to move the stones yourself. You had to live with the results of your construction choices. This parallels Nan Madol perfectly. We don't know how they moved those massive stones. We can theorize. Rafts, leverage, coordinated human effort. But we don't know for certain. It's a mystery, an impossible seeming accomplishment. Your life is the same. You don't fully understand how you managed what you managed, how you moved certain impossibly heavy stones into place, how you survived certain periods that should have crushed you, how you built anything stable given the challenges you faced. It's a mystery, a beautiful, enduring mystery, the mystery of human resilience, the mystery of how we keep building even when it seems impossible, the mystery of where strength comes from when we need it most. You are Nan Madol. You are an ancient city built on impossible foundations. You are a structure that shouldn't exist, but does. You are a testament to human will and human effort and human refusal to give up even when the stones are too heavy and the project seems too complex and the outcome is uncertain. And like Nan Madol, you're still standing. After all these years, after all the construction and deconstruction, after all the building and crumbling and rebuilding, you're still here, still solid, still functioning, still inhabitable. This is worth recognizing, worth honoring, worth pausing in the darkness to acknowledge. You've built a life. It took decades. It took everything you had. But you did it. You're living in it right now, resting in the structure you created, surrounded by walls you raised, supported by foundations you've maintained. Breathe into this awareness. Feel the solidity of what you've constructed, the reality of it, the substance. You are not without form. You are not insubstantial. You are architecture. You are structure. You are the result of massive, sustained effort over decades. And now, settle deeper into your bed. Let your breathing slow. Notice how your body knows how to rest, how your muscles know how to release, how you can simply lie here, supported by the structure of your life, held by the accumulated effort of all those years. The stones are in place, the walls are standing, the channels are flowing, your life is built. And tonight, you get to rest within it, to be held by what you've created, to acknowledge the mystery and the magnificence of your own existence. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let your thoughts slow. Let the ancient city teach you that what matters most is not perfection, but endurance. Not flawlessness, but function. Not being impressive, but being real. You are real. You are here. You are built and building still. You are Nan Madol. And that is enough. Now we come to the part of the story that's harder to tell. The part about what happens after the building is done. After the stones are in place. After the major construction is complete. We come to the part about time and what it does to everything we build. Because Nan Madol isn't new anymore. It hasn't been new for 800 years. The civilization that built it is gone. The people who knew its original purpose are gone. The ceremonies that once filled those stone courtyards have been forgotten. The city remains, but it's changed. Weathered, eroded, reclaimed in places by the jungle that surrounds it. The walls still stand, but they're crumbling. Stones have fallen. Vegetation has grown through gaps in the construction. Roots have pushed walls apart. The ocean flows through channels that were precisely constructed, but those channels are narrower now, filled partially with sediment, changed by centuries of tides. Nan Madol is ruins now. Beautiful ruins. Haunting ruins. Ruins that speak to something profound about the nature of existence, about what lasts and what doesn't, about the relationship between building and decay, about the beauty that emerges when human construction meets natural reclamation. You understand this now in ways you couldn't have understood when you were younger. You understand what it means to be weathered, to be changed by time, to have parts of yourself that are crumbling, to have structures you built that no longer function the way they once did, to be simultaneously solid and deteriorating, still standing, but visibly marked by decades of existence. Your body is weathering. This is simply true, not a judgment, not a tragedy, just a fact. Your body has been in use for decades. It has carried you through all those years of construction. It has moved all those heavy stones. It has climbed and lifted and strained and pushed. It has worked ceaselessly to keep you alive and functioning. And now it's showing wear. The joints are less flexible, the muscles less strong, the skin less elastic, the systems less efficient. You have aches that weren't there before, limitations that didn't exist in your youth. You tire more easily. You recover more slowly. Your body is crumbling in small ways, just like the walls of Nan Madol. This is hard to accept. You remember when your body was new, when it could do anything you asked of it without complaint, when you could move through the world with ease and confidence, and no awareness that this would ever change. When you took your physical capability completely for granted because it seemed permanent. It wasn't permanent. Nothing is. The body ages. The structures wear down. The stones that once fit perfectly begin to shift. This is the nature of physical existence. This is what happens to everything built from matter. Entropy, decay, the slow but inexorable work of time. Undoing what was constructed with such effort. You have specific places in your body where the weathering is most obvious. Knees that ache, a back that complains, hands that don't grip as firmly, eyes that don't focus as sharply. Each limitation is like a fallen stone in the walls of Nan Madol. A small collapse. A gap where there used to be continuity. A place where the structure is visibly compromised. Some days, this fills you with grief, with anger, with resistance. You want your body to be what it was. You want the walls to stand straight and strong. You want to rebuild what's crumbling. You push against the inevitable. You fight the weathering. You refuse to accept that this is simply what happens. Other days, you find a strange peace with it, a recognition that weathering is evidence of having been here, of having lived. The cracks are proof that you've withstood storms. The erosion is testimony to decades of use. You are ruins, yes, but ruins are beautiful. They tell a story. They speak to endurance. They demonstrate that something substantial was built here, even if it's no longer pristine. Nan Madol teaches this. The ruins are more interesting than a new city would be. More mysterious, more moving. There's a poignancy to weathered stones that fresh construction doesn't have. There's a depth, a gravitas, a sense of time made visible. Your aging body has this same quality. The lines in your face are like cracks in stone walls. They map where you've been, what you've weathered, how time has moved across you. Your grey hair is like the silver-green lichen that grows on ancient basalt, a natural decoration, an honest marker of age. You're not required to love this. You're allowed to mourn what's been lost to weathering. But you might also consider that there's something beautiful about it, something true, something that connects you to every other structure that's ever been built and then weathered by time. The jungle is reclaiming Nan Madol. Slowly but persistently, roots grow through the stone walls, vines cover the surfaces, trees spring up in courtyards that were once carefully maintained. The boundary between the human-built and the natural is blurring. The city is being absorbed back into the island it was built upon. This is happening to you too. Parts of yourself are being reclaimed by forces you don't control. Your carefully constructed identity is loosening. The walls you built to contain certain aspects of yourself are crumbling. Things you suppressed are growing through the gaps. The wild parts of yourself that you tamed and controlled for decades are returning. Maybe you're less patient with pretense now, less willing to maintain facades that take too much energy. The social walls you built are crumbling and you're letting them. You're less concerned with what people think, less invested in performing a version of yourself that meets expectations. The jungle of your authentic self is reclaiming territory. Maybe memories you'd successfully buried are surfacing, growing up through the stones you placed over them. You're thinking about your childhood more, about your parents, about choices you made decades ago that you haven't thought about in years. The vegetation of memory is pushing through carefully constructed walls of forgetting. Maybe emotions you learned to control are less controlled now. You cry more easily, or you laugh more freely, or you feel anger you spent years suppressing. The channels you built to direct emotional flow are blocked or broken, and the energy is going where it wants to go, rather than where you direct it. This feels chaotic sometimes, like you're losing control, like the structure you worked so hard to build is falling apart, like the life you constructed is being taken over by forces that don't respect all your effort. But maybe reclamation isn't destruction. Maybe it's a return to something more honest, more integrated, more whole. Maybe the jungle isn't destroying Nan Madol. Maybe it's incorporating the city into a larger ecosystem. Maybe the ruins and the rainforest together create something more beautiful than either would be alone. Your aging self might be like this. The person you constructed with such effort and the person you authentically are beneath that construction are merging. The walls between them are crumbling. What emerges is more complex than either version alone, more interesting, more real. You contain multitudes now. The child you were still lives in you. You can feel them sometimes in moments of wonder or fear or simple joy. The teenager lives in you too, with their longing and confusion and desperate desire to be seen. The young adult lives in you, ambitious and uncertain and trying so hard. The parent lives in you if you had children, still protective, still worried, still wanting the best for them even though they're grown. All these versions exist simultaneously in the structure you've become. They're not separate. They're not sequential. They're layered, like the different construction phases of Nan Madol, like archaeological strata. Each version built on top of the previous one, but not erasing it, just adding to it, creating complexity. At your age, you can access all these versions of yourself. The walls between them have worn thin. You can remember being young with a clarity that surprises you. You can feel old emotions with their original intensity. You're not just the person you are now. You're everyone you've ever been, all at once, all available, all part of the ruins you've become. This is the gift of weathering, the gift of having walls crumble. You become more porous, more permeable, more open to the full complexity of your own existence. You're not trying to be one coherent thing anymore. You're allowing yourself to be many things, all the contradictions, all the inconsistencies, all the different versions that somehow coexist in the same structure. The channels of Nan Madol still flow with water. Twice a day, the tide comes in. Twice a day, it recedes. This rhythm has continued for 800 years. The stones don't stop it. The decay doesn't stop it. The jungle doesn't stop it. The water flows through the ancient channels following patterns established centuries ago. The tide is indifferent to human construction. It does what it's always done. It will continue doing it long after the last stone has fallen. Your life has tides too, rhythms that continue regardless of what you build or how you weather. The tide of days, morning and night, morning and night. This rhythm has accompanied you your entire life. It will continue until it doesn't, until your final night. But until then, the rhythm continues. reliable, inevitable, indifferent to your efforts and your decay. The tide of seasons if you live where seasons change. The cycle of growth and dormancy, expansion and contraction, warmth and cold. This rhythm moves through you whether you notice it or not. Your body responds to it. Your mood responds to it. You're part of natural cycles that are much larger and older than your individual existence. The tide of your own energy. You've learned to notice this. The times when you have capacity and the times when you don't. The periods of productivity and the periods of necessary rest. The ebb and flow of your own vitality. You're less able to force this tide now. Less able to override it with willpower. Your body insists on its own rhythms, and you've learned to respect them. These tides are comforting in their consistency. When everything else is uncertain, when your body is weathering and your structures are crumbling and you're not sure what the future holds, the tide still comes in. The tide still goes out. The rhythm continues. This is something you can count on. At night, lying in bed, you can feel these tides most clearly. The tide of your own breathing. In and out. In and out. The tide of your heartbeat. Steady, persistent. The tide of thoughts. Rising and falling. Appearing and disappearing. You don't control these tides. You simply witness them. You float in them. You allow them to move through you. Nan Madol sits in the lagoon, surrounded by water, experiencing tide after tide. The stones don't resist. They simply endure. They allow the water to flow around them and through them. They allow the rhythm without fighting it. You're learning to do the same. To allow the tides of your life without constant resistance. To let energy ebb without panicking. To let thoughts come without clinging to them. To let emotions rise and fall like water in channels. To trust the rhythm even when you can't control it. What remains of Nan Madol? Stones, walls, channels. The basic structure is still there even though the details have been lost. The massive stones still rest where they were placed. The walls still define spaces even though they're incomplete. The channels still direct flow even though they're partially filled. What remains of you? More than you think. Less than you wish. The basic structure of who you are is still intact. Your core values, your fundamental character, the ways you've learned to move through the world. These things haven't crumbled. They've weathered, but they haven't disappeared. You're still fundamentally the same person you've always been. The child who needed love still needs it. The teenager who longed for connection still longs for it. The young adult who wanted to matter still wants to matter. These core desires haven't changed. They've just been built around, covered with layers of experience and adaptation and coping. But they're still there, still foundational, still directing the flow of your life. And the capacity you've developed, the skills you've learned, the wisdom you've accumulated, this remains too. You know things now that you didn't know before. You understand complexity. You recognize patterns. You can see connections. You have perspective. This isn't gone just because your body is weathering. This isn't lost just because some of your walls are crumbling. Your mind is still sharp in ways that matter. Maybe you don't remember names as quickly. Maybe you lose words sometimes. Maybe you walk into rooms and forget why. These are fallen stones, small collapses. But the essential structure of your intelligence remains. Your ability to think, to understand, to make meaning. This is intact. This endures. Your heart is still capable. Maybe it's been broken. Maybe it's weathered by losses. Maybe it's more cautious than it used to be. But it still works. It still opens. It still feels. It still loves. The capacity for connection hasn't crumbled. It's still there, still functioning, still central to who you are. What you've learned hasn't disappeared. The lessons from all those years of building, the insights from all those failures, the understanding that came from weathering storms. This is stored in the structure of who you are. This is part of the ruins you've become. This is what remains, and what will remain as long as you remain. Nan Madol had a purpose once. We don't know exactly what it was. Ceremonial center, maybe. Royal city. Place of burial or ritual or governance. It served some function. It meant something to the people who built it. It was central to their civilization. And then that purpose ended. The civilization declined or relocated. The ceremonies stopped. The royalty departed. The city was abandoned. Its original purpose was lost. But Nan Madol gained new purposes. It became a mystery, a wonder, a place of archaeological interest, a tourist destination, a symbol of Pacific Island ingenuity, a reminder of the transience of civilizations. It serves different purposes now than it served originally. It means different things. It has value in ways its builders never imagined. Your life is the same. The purposes you once had are changing or have changed. If you raise children, that purpose is complete or completing. They're grown. They don't need you the way they once did. The structure you built around parenting is no longer central. That purpose has been fulfilled or released. If you built a career, you're at the end of it or past it. You're retired or retiring. The purpose that defined decades of your life is concluding. The structure you built around work is no longer occupied. That identity is weathering. That purpose is being reclaimed by other things. The roles you played are changing. You're not who you were. The purposes that drove you for decades are less urgent or gone entirely. You're in transition. The old purposes are ending. The new purposes aren't entirely clear. This is disorienting, frightening sometimes. You wonder what you're for now, what your purpose is, why you're still here if the main work of your life is done. You wonder if you matter anymore, if you have value, if there's a reason to keep building, or if you should simply maintain what exists until it finally crumbles completely. But Nan Madol teaches something crucial. Purpose isn't singular. It changes. It evolves. What something means isn't fixed. A structure can serve different purposes at different times. The ruins have value even though they no longer serve their original function. Maybe especially because they no longer serve their original function. Your new purposes might be invisible to you right now, but they exist. You matter in ways you don't fully recognize. Your presence affects people. Your existence has value. The wisdom you've accumulated serves purposes you might not even be aware of. Maybe your purpose now is simply to witness, to be someone who has lived long enough to understand how things unfold over time, to offer perspective, to be a living reminder that people survive things, that lives weather but endure, that crumbling isn't the same as collapsing. Maybe your purpose is to allow yourself to be seen as you are, not performing, not constructing, just being, authentic, weathered, real. This is its own form of service. Younger people need to see what aging looks like when it's accepted rather than resisted, when it's honored rather than hidden. Maybe your purpose is to rest, to stop building, to stop striving, to simply inhabit the structure you've created, to enjoy what you built, to appreciate what remains, to be grateful for having made it this far. Maybe your purpose is to let go, to practice releasing, to demonstrate that holding on isn't the only option, that there's grace in allowing things to crumble, that you can watch parts of your life dissolve without losing yourself entirely. You don't have to know your purpose. You don't have to have it figured out. Purpose will emerge. It will find you. Just like new meanings found Nan Madol after its builders left. Just like the ruins became something different and valuable in ways that had nothing to do with original intentions. Trust this. Trust that your existence has purpose, even when you can't identify it. Trust that you matter even when you feel useless. Trust that the weathered ruins of who you've become have beauty and value and meaning that you might not be able to see clearly, but that exists nonetheless. The walls of Nan Madol will continue crumbling. Eventually, they'll fall completely. Eventually, the jungle will reclaim everything. Eventually, even the stones will erode into sand. This is inevitable. This is the fate of all human construction. To build, to weather, to crumble, to return to the elements that formed it. You know this truth now in your bones. You're facing your own impermanence, your own eventual return. The structures you've built will outlast you in some forms. Your children, if you had them. Your work, if it was the kind that leaves traces. Your influence on people you've known. These will continue after you're gone. But you, yourself, this particular configuration of consciousness and body and experience, this is temporary. The stones will fall eventually. The walls will crumble completely. The tide will flow through empty channels where your life once directed it. This is not morbid. This is just true. This is the nature of existence. And somehow, knowing this makes right now more precious. This night, this breath, this moment of lying in bed, feeling the weight of blankets and the rhythm of your heartbeat and the slow tide of thoughts moving through your consciousness. This is happening now. This is real now. This matters now. Nan Madol has been ruins for hundreds of years, but it's still beautiful, still valuable, still meaningful, still teaching. The fact that it's crumbling doesn't diminish it. The fact that it won't last forever doesn't make it worthless. The impermanence is part of the beauty. The weathering is part of the story. The slow return to jungle and ocean is part of what makes it profound. You are the same. Your weathering is part of your beauty. Your impermanence is part of your value. The fact that you won't last forever doesn't diminish the significance of your existence. You are ruins, yes, but ruins that still stand. Ruins that still serve purposes. Ruins that still matter. So rest now in the structure you've become. Rest in the weathered walls. Rest in the crumbling courtyards. Rest in the channels where your life still flows. Rest in the knowledge that you've built something substantial. Something that has lasted decades. Something that will leave traces even after you're gone. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink deeper into the mattress. Let the weight of years settle over you like a blanket. Let the accumulated experience of decades surround you like walls. Let the tide of this night flow through you like water through ancient channels. You are Nan Madol. Ancient, weathered, mysterious, enduring, built on impossible foundations, constructed with impossible effort, standing despite decades of erosion, beautiful in your ruins, valuable in your imperfection, meaningful in your impermanence. The jungle grows through your walls. The tide flows through your channels. The stones are falling one by one. And still you stand. Still you matter. Still you are here. This is enough. This has always been enough. You are enough. Let the city sleep now. Let the ruins rest. Let the ancient stones settle into their positions. Let the water flow without resistance. Let the jungle reclaim what it will. Let the night hold everything gently. You have journeyed through 800 years tonight, through construction and weathering, through building and crumbling, through purpose and purposelessness, through strength and vulnerability, through the entire arc of what it means to be a structure in time. Now let the journey end. Let the exploration conclude. Let the consciousness that has been so active settle into stillness. Let the mind that has been remembering and connecting and understanding finally rest. The ancient city teaches its final lesson, that everything built will weather. Everything that stands will crumble. Everything that matters will eventually return to the elements it came from. And this is not tragedy. This is simply the way of things, the pattern, the rhythm, the truth. You are living inside this truth right now. You are weathering. You are crumbling. You are being reclaimed. And you are still here, still conscious, still capable of rest and peace and simple existence, still able to lie in bed and pull covers up and breathe slowly and allow sleep to approach. This is the gift, this moment, this breath, this night, this life that is still yours even though it's weathering, even though it's temporary, even though it's imperfect and incomplete and crumbling in places. You are here, in ruins, in beauty, in truth. You are Nan Madol, and Nan Madol endures. Close your eyes now. Let the images of ancient stones fade. Let the metaphors dissolve. Let the comparisons fall away. Let there be only darkness, only breathing, only the sensation of lying down, only the approach of sleep. The massive construction project of your life continues, even in sleep, even in rest, even in this moment of complete stillness. Your heart continues its work. Your lungs continue their rhythm. Your cells continue their maintenance. The structure continues. The endurance continues. You continue. And this is more than enough. This simple continuation, this persistent existence, this refusal to collapse entirely, this weathered, crumbling, beautiful persistence. Rest now. Rest completely. Rest without resistance. Let sleep reclaim you the way the jungle reclaims stone. Let dreams flow through you the way the tide flows through channels. Let consciousness dissolve the way daylight dissolves into darkness. You have earned this rest. You have built enough. You have weathered enough. You have endured enough. Now you can simply be, simply exist, simply float in the ancient rhythms that will continue long after you're gone. The stones rest in the lagoon. The walls stand in the jungle. The channels flow with the tide. And you rest in your bed. All of it part of the same pattern. All of it temporary and eternal simultaneously. All of it mattering and not mattering in equal measure. The fires die down. The stories settle. And the world grows still. Let your thoughts drift away like embers on the wind. Good night. You've journeyed far through time tonight. Now it's time to journey into dreams. Close your eyes, breathe, and let sleep find you.